Welcome back to the Us vs. Them channel. I'm your host, Vince, and we're going to break down the next fight for the upcoming fight night this weekend, UFC Rio. We have Vitor Petrino versus Thomas Petersen. Petrino is sitting at a minus 320 favorite, and Petersen is a plus 235 underdog. Before we get into the breakdown, if I can remind you guys to like the video if you agree, or even if you don't agree, just like my shit, please. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're 3 subscriptions away at the time of recording from getting our first milestone of 50. That's exciting stuff. So thanks for watching, thanks for the likes, thanks for everything. We appreciate you guys. When you're breaking down Petrino's fights, I have heard DC described his fighting style as having like a lot of rawness. Basically, like, shows that like he's got natural abilities, but he's a little bit inexperienced, and he shows that inexperience as sometimes throughout fights. For instance, in his striking, you know, he's got big power in his hands. He definitely has the ability to put somebody's lights out. We've seen that when he was at the light heavyweight division, and I'm sure we're going to see some of that at the heavyweight division, potentially even this weekend. But he does tend to rely a little bit too much on that big power, and he's not really looking to set up his shots. You know, if you're fighting a professional fighter, they're not just going to let you just walk up and just fucking hit them. You know, the trick is to defend yourself, hit while not getting hit. So they're not only good at hitting, but they're also good at not getting touched. You know, Petrino, you can definitely tell on the regional scene, he was just kind of used to just blitzing forward, landing big shots, and that's a wrap. You know, we saw that in his UFC debut against Anton Turchilage, the Pleasure Man. You know, Dana signed the Pleasure Man again. We fucking love that dude. But anyways, we saw that in the beginning of his UFC career where he kind of comes in and he blitzes in, lands his big power shots, goes home early, you know. As he starts to work his way up in the ranks, and especially in the light heavyweight division, you know, we saw him start to fight guys who are more battle tested, and that's not going to work against him, you know. So he's really going to learn to set up those big punches. He seems to be leaning more and more into his jab as he progresses throughout his career, that's definitely going to help him. Being able to throw some other touching and then coming across and bam, hitting him with your big shot. That's obviously, I mean, you know, pretty basic stuff, honestly. But, you know, like I said, he just kind of became used to being the buzzsaw and just running through guys, and how he's starting to realize at this point in his career that's not something he can keep doing. Speaking of Petrino's rawness, I mean, one of the things that, you know, one of the simple mistakes that he tends to make is he keeps his hands way too fucking low. I know I've harped on this in this channel before, but obviously you keep your hands low, you're rolling the dice, you know. He's not Michael Venom Page or, you know, some of these other guys who do fight like that and keep their hands low, but they also move in and out really well. Petrino moves in and out decent for a heavyweight, but not nearly good enough to keep his hands low. I think, you know, when he was at light heavyweight, he was able to get away with that for the most part, just because people had to respect the power coming back, you know. If they come into his range, obviously that's where they're going to land their knockout shots, but they got to expect something coming back too. So I think just the threat of that big shot kind of kept him safe, but it kept him safe only for so long. We saw in the Dustin Jacoby fight where Jacoby ended up landing a big overhand late in the third round, you know, somewhere in the third round, and put Petrino's lights out, you know. So keeping your guard high at all points in the fight is always a good move. Speaking of carrying your hands low, I mean, I have seen footage of Petersen's hands being a little bit too low for my comfort as well. In this fight between the two guys, obviously both of them need to keep their hands up, but I think it's much more important for Petersen to keep his hands up versus Petrino. But Petersen, obviously, he does lean on his boxing skills. He's, I don't know, an okay boxer. If I guess, you know, give him that credit for sure. I have seen in the past, like the Jamal Pokes fight, for instance, where his boxing didn't look great, honestly. It just didn't look great. He looked slow, and I don't know if that's just because Pokes is faster than him, but the punches seemed like they were coming in slow motion, and it didn't seem like he was really thrown with intention to cause damage, you know, which is quite the opposite of Petrino on the other side. He's trying to take your fucking face off with every single punch. Then you fast forward a little bit to the Usman fight, and Usman in the Muhammad Usman fight, you know, his boxing did look a little bit sharper, but, you know, in that fight I couldn't tell, is his boxing sharp, or is Usman just really afraid of getting hit? It's always kind of been my feel of Muhammad Usman in the past. He just seems like he doesn't like getting touched, and he looks really uncomfortable when he does get punched, you know. So I just couldn't tell if that was the case, or if Petersen's boxing has improved. I would imagine it improved a little bit from his first fight because it didn't look great there. But, it's just something worth noting, honestly. Speaking more on the rawness of Petrino's fighting style, that was very evident in the Anthony Smith fight. He got into a nice double leg on Anthony Smith, and he could have cut the corner and turned his head and kind of ran him down, which is the smart way to finish double legs, and MMA at least. A way to not do that though is to lift them straight up in the air and let them wrap their legs around your fucking torso and get around your fucking head, and then you're trapped into a guillotine. And that's what we saw in the Anthony Smith fight. He got a finish a couple minutes into the fight because of that. And that was just that rawness that DC was touching on, that inexperience, I mean, Petrino, when you look, how old is he? Petrino's only 28 years old, especially for the heavyweight division. He's still a fucking baby, but we are starting to get to the point in his career where it's time to start cutting out some of that, smoothing out some of that rawness, and, start to make, tactical improvements as a fighter. That's just a simple mistake that, he could have easily avoided and probably would have won that fight in a pretty dominating fashion. But, that didn't happen, and here we are. I think maybe it worked out for his benefit, though, because now he moved up to the heavyweight division. He got away from the light heavyweight division where there's more athleticism, more speed, that rawness that'll get you in trouble at that division. This division, he can still get away with it for a while. The technicality of fighting definitely goes down the higher up in weight class you go. That's why these 125 pounders, 135 pounders, they have to be fucking good everywhere. You have a hole in one of those in that division anywhere at all, it'll be exploited by every single opponent. The higher up you go, I mean, almost every single fighter as a whole. Once you get to the heavyweight division, there's maybe 2 or 3 guys in the whole division that are pretty fucking complete. So I think he's going to be able to get away with it for a while, but that's just something to keep track of in this fight, and that's something that obviously can get him into trouble. I don't really see a gilly happening, but I'm just using that as an example. Petersen, on the other hand, he's got a wrestling background, so that's definitely what he leans on when it comes to the grappling. He's not necessarily known for his high-level jiu-jitsu skills, but his control on the ground is okay. I think he does his best work in getting takedowns. But, this isn't a fucking folk-style wrestling match or a freestyle wrestling match where you can get a takedown and that's all you really need. You need to get control time and implement damage on top in order for that takedown to have any type of scoring on the judges' scorecards. Either that or make it high amplitude and fucking splash them on the ground. But at the heavyweight division, that's never a good idea. It's definitely much better to find control on the top and land damage. So if you want to implement your wrestling in MMA, you have to be able to have good takedowns and you have to have good control time at the same time. Otherwise, that wrestling advantage that you have is not really going to work in your favor. For my official prediction, I'm going to lean with Vitor Petrino on this one. I've been picking against the Brazilians a lot throughout this card, and that could really come back to bite me in the ass, or I could look like a fucking genius. Only time is going to tell. But I do think that Petrino has the advantage here. I think that the athletic advantage is lying with Petrino, which at the heavyweight division does go a long way. He's going to have the speed advantage as well. And even though his boxing, like the technical side of his boxing isn't great, isn't high level, actually, it's his kickboxing mainly, not just his boxing. He does throw kicks. Anyways, he does have a little bit of a technical advantage in that aspect as well. So I think a lot of those things are going to help him out here. I think the takedowns that Petersen has had success in, he's going to have a really hard time lowering his level on a guy that's quicker and more athletic than he is. And I just don't see those takedowns looking as good as they have in the past. So for my official prediction, I'm leaning towards Vitor Petrino. This can go one of 2 ways, honestly. I mean, he did show in his last fight he can get submissions. I shouldn't rule that out entirely, honestly. But in the preparation of this video, I have. So we're fucking running with it. I see it going one of potentially 3 ways, but only 2 ways. It could be a decision or it could be a knockout. We have seen in the past where Petrino is probably a little bit too reserved, too gun-shy. I think that's his way of, running back, being a fucking buzzsaw and running through guys. His coaches are teaching him, like, hey, be patient. Now you have to find a balance in that. And the balance is, be patient while implementing damage still. That's what you want to do. So I'm going to pick with Petrino by decision on this one. I think Petersen is relatively durable. We haven't seen him really get concussively destroyed, maybe outside of the Shamil the Blob Gaziev. But yeah, I'm rambling. My official pick is Vitor Petrino by decision. That prop is sitting at plus 260. The knockout prop is sitting at a plus 155. That's all I got for you guys in this breakdown. Stop by for the next one. It's our first chick fight of the card as well. We got Irina Alexeva versus Beatrice Mesquita. So their names kind of rhyme. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Come back for the next video. Because even though there's no name value, there can still be a lot of value in the bets, and that's what we're here for. We're here to steal Vegas's money. So, yeah, stop by for that video. Thank you guys for watching to the end, and that's it. I'm the fuck out of here. Here's my forehead.